They called him a hero, but he called himself a murderer. When the guns fell silent in 1918, one soldier did something no one could understand. He burned every medal he ever earned. The year was 1918, the final months of World War I. Europe was nothing but ashes and ghosts. In the trenches of France, Captain Edward Finch, a 28-year-old British officer, had survived the impossible: gas attacks, endless shell fire, and the screams of dying men. When the war ended, he returned home to London. Crowds cheered, flags waved, and medals were pinned on his chest. He smiled for the photographs, but inside, something in him was shattered. Every night, Edward woke up drenched in sweat, hearing the cries of soldiers he couldn't save. He remembered a young private named Samuel, barely 17, who looked at him like a brother. One morning, under orders to charge through machine gun fire, Edward gave the command. Samuel ran first. He never made it back. Edward carried his dog tag in his pocket every day after that. As weeks passed, the newspapers called men like him heroes of the empire. But Edward knew better. He saw the truth, that war didn't create heroes. It created survivors, haunted by the faces of the dead. One evening, as the city celebrated Victory Day, Edward sat alone in his garden, staring at his uniform. The ribbons glistened in the firelight, symbols of pride, honor, and sacrifice. He thought of Samuel's mother, who never saw her son come home. He thought of the French villages reduced to rubble. He thought of the silence that followed every explosion. And then he stood up. He took off his medals, one by one, and threw them into the fire. The metal hissed and melted, turning to ash. Forgive me for mistaking medals for meaning. From that night on, he never wore his uniform again. Instead, he began rebuilding homes for widows and orphans left behind by the war. He never took payment, never spoke of his past. People called him the silent captain, but he said nothing, because some stories didn't need words. Years later, when Edward Finch died, they found no medals in his home, only a small wooden box containing a rusted dog tag engraved with one word: Samuel. On his gravestone were carved the words, "He fought not for glory, but for peace." Sometimes the bravest act of all is to walk away from war and start rebuilding the world again.